Yeah. See, I was waiting for the smile. It was good. Morning, Jess. What's first and foremost, what's the mug? What is the mug this morning?
Oh, it's got lipstick on it, but it is a beautiful day to be a woman in sports because every day is a beautiful day, John, to be a woman in sports.
Absolutely. And first and foremost, glad to have you back.
Yeah, it's been a world traveling period, but glad to
Yes.
be back as well, ready to get back to the grind, to the realism of life, and back to the weekly 8 hour round trip to Charlotte. I mean, living the everyone asks how the job is, and I mean, it's a dream come true, but I really know I-85 better than most people, I think, in this world.
Yeah, you know the rest stop on the other side of Lake Hartwell. You know that you can stop there. You know where
Hmm.
all the fireworks buildings are, and
Yep, I know where the best restrooms are in different areas of South Carolina. I know where not to stop on the way through. So
uh-huh.
I'm learning. It's been a good year of learning curve experiences, John.
All right. So since you dropped this, you mentioned learning experiences. What was that first year like for you? Have you had the chance to sit there and step back and go, man, this thing really was trying to like grab a comet by the tail at 400,000 miles an hour? What was that first year like for you up there?
Yeah, I think it has been really hard in reality because I don't think I've had a chance until the season was over. I didn't really have a chance to pause and realize what I'd achieved because when you're doing it every single week, sometimes 2 times a week with the Wednesday games, you don't really take a moment. You're in that grind set of match, research, repeat, match, research, repeat. And I think that it was amazing to have it that way. I think that actually made it a smoother transition because I think if I'd had a lot of time on my hands, maybe I would have got more anxious. Maybe I would have been thinking about the reality of what I was doing and the hugeness of this moment for someone that's wanted to do this for their entire adult life. But this off season has sort of given me time to think about where I'm at, how well I've done, but also where I want to be. And I think that's the most important thing, right? A lot of people see an end goal and they think that, oh, I've achieved it now. I'm in MLS. I'm at the highest level in terms of being in the US, other than the national team, of course. But it's so important not to stop grinding because of that. And people ask me, why are you doing the college game still? Or why are you still doing these random games 3 hours from your house when you could be just, enjoying being home? But for me, it's about perfecting my craft. It's about seeing the next generation of players. And it's about being able to always remain humble and working on yourself because I know I'm not where I want to be as a commentator in 5 years' time in terms of my individual attributes. I just want to keep getting better. And I'm so excited to have the opportunity to do that with Charlotte. It's been a great club. It's been a wonderful fan base. And it's been a very exciting first season. But I think that people have seen with the off season that year two has the potential to be even more exciting.
See, you've opened so many doors for me now. Do you think of yourself as a role model?
Yeah, I would like to think so. I think that not just as a woman in sports either, because I know that that's the easy one to clutch to. And of course, I want to be a role model for women in sports. I want to show young girls that they can do this. I want to show female fans that they belong and that they have a knowledge base because I still think we've got a long way to go with sexism in sport. I think the US does a better job than England. Honestly, I've had a lot less abuse from Americans than I have English people, but that's a story for another day. I want to be a role model for everyone, though, because I think it's important that people see a talented individual, regardless of their gender, and that they see that hard work really does pay off. I know we hear a lot about it's who you know and things like that. And obviously, the who you know helps having connections with the right people. But I don't think those connections come by chance. I think with my story, you see that you create those connections by working hard, by always leaving a positive impact on whoever you speak to and making sure that you're polite and respectful to everybody you cross paths with in this business, whether it's the lunch lady, whether it's the cleaner, whether it's your role model, whether it's when I met Jason and you back many moons ago in a GHSA game. It was about always being a respectful individual and making sure that you show what you have to offer, but always putting your best foot forward. So I think who you know is helpful, but it's most importantly about how you handle yourself around who you know. And I want people to know that hard work, even though at times it may feel like really hard work in terms of driving all over, taking very small paychecks. If anything for games, the hard work can eventually pay off tenfold if you put that hard work into practice enough.
Especially at 57 cents a mile. You got to make sure that you write count all your mileage down and figure out what's going on. Okay, so you mentioned the lower division college stuff, and folks always wondering, it's like, okay, why are you calling this one? Why are you calling this one? I think that all of us here at SDH, we enjoy calling the lower division stuff because it's new and it's different and it means a lot to that community that we're there in. And it opens up doors to stories that we might not necessarily have known if we weren't there in the first place. And one of the guys that I wanted to get into the discussion with you about was a signing by Atlanta United 2 last week. And when I alerted you to this, you're typing me in all caps all of a sudden. And it's because of that relationship that you have with Georgia Gwinnett College and being able to call matches in the NAIA. Kareem Tamimi was signed by Atlanta United. He's going to be a part of Atlanta United 2 for MLS Next Pro. You typed at me in all caps, so I'm guessing that this was a pretty good signing for Atlanta United.
Yeah, it was. I'm a little frustrated that maybe he didn't look in a different direction up I-85. I think Atlanta United too has got onto a really great player with a lot of potential. And you talk about GGC, I think you have to shout out the entire program over there because they consistently breed quality players. You think back to Jack Gurr, of course, coming out of that system. You think back to Lewis Sharp, a goalkeeper that is now a goalkeeper coach with Atlanta United, and they do such a good job in the NAIA of creating a fantastic game model, which means that I'm not too concerned about Kareem Tamimi being able to step up to this next level because I think that the program at GGC is so professional and such a quality program that they're used to what it takes to be successful at the next level. I mean, he broke pretty much every record you've ever heard of at GGC in terms of goal scoring, in terms of, game-winning goals. He has a great first touch. He is dangerous inside the 18-yard box. He scores worldy goals. He also scores tap-ins because he understands what it means to be a forward and a creative player, set ball specialist. Like, the superlatives there for him aren't enough because he was such a quality player for this team. And I think that the sky is the limit because one of the things I love about this GGC team from speaking to different players on the team is it seems that they have that humble attitude as well. They understand what it means to work hard. That seems to be something that the Grizzlies really instill in all of their players, knowing what hard work takes and how to be successful. And that's why I'm so excited to see him thrive. And I'm going to have one eye on Atlanta United too, just to see how he does. But obviously, I will remain in Carolina blue.
No shock there. But all right, so since you mentioned Carolina blue, let's get into the Crown here for a second. And it's been interesting so far. Enzo Copetti in, Ashley Westwood in, Christian Fuchs retires. When you look at, let's kind of go backward a little bit before we come forward. When you look back at season 1 for the Crown, what are some of your bigger takeaways?
I think that firstly, a lot of the preconceptions before the season were maybe a little too harsh on this side. I get where they came from. I remember a special Jason Longshore rant saying that he was worried about his friends that were commentating this team, that they might be in for trouble. Love me some Jason, but I'm glad that you guys had that hot take and maybe it wasn't quite as hot, maybe a lukewarm take, because I do think that there were some blowouts, there were some disappointments, there were some games where maybe you saw where we needed improvements, but as a whole, I think we were competitive across the whole course of the season, which was exciting. I think that the fan base was incredible. We know what it's like to play in front of an incredible stadium now and have that 12th player environment in terms of the home field advantage, which I think that not that many teams in MLS have. Obviously, Atlanta United is one of them with their incredible fan base as well. And I think that that was a really important moment for the South to recognize that it's not just Atlanta United, it's Charlotte, it's the whole of this region of America that is really embracing soccer in an incredible way. So that was very exciting. I think that Karas Fedorski has the potential to be one of the best players if he's able to find his role now that he's moved in to a more of a playmaking number 10, and hopefully Capetti is the number 9 that can allow him really to have that connectivity and thrive. And I would say that the biggest takeaway would be that like 90% of the puzzle is there, but there's 10% to still be filled in terms of game management, in terms of understanding roles on the pitch, closing out games. And that's where, with Latanzio now as the official head coach rather than interim, and being able to have this long extended period to stamp his authority on this side, that I'm really, really excited to see what this club can do in year 2.
When you look at the East from 30,000 feet, Nashville's coming back in. So that's another part of the MLS dynamic that we're going to be looking at this year. When you look at the Eastern Conference, how much change are you looking at when it comes to the teams that'll be north of the playoff bar playing in the postseason? I mean, obviously, since we're talking in mid-January, obviously we're going to lock all of this stuff in right now in pen and just lock it down. But I mean, how much change from the transactions that we've seen here halfway through the January window and some movement here and there, how much change are you looking at this year in the Eastern Conference? Are you looking at it as fairly chalky?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really tight conference. And I think we've seen that throughout. When you look back to how many teams were still into the mix right up to 2-3 games before deadline day, it just showed what a compact unit this was. People were beating everybody, right? And that's what makes MLS such an exciting division, that you can't predict results week in, week out, that anybody on their best day has the ability to beat anybody. In terms of transactions, I think that Charlotte has shown a lot of ambition in this transfer window, and that is why everybody around the club is saying that playoffs is the expectation. If we don't make playoffs this year, then it is viewed to be a failed season. And we're talking in January, of course, and a lot can happen in terms of movement, in terms of injuries, in terms of all of these things. Knock on some wood that that's not the case for this side, but it's very important from a Charlotte FC perspective that they're able to get into the playoffs this year, because I think that when you look back at last season, finishing 8 points outside playoffs, I think it was, but being in the mix up until 2 games before the end of the season, when you look back at the results that we had, where we maybe choked in a game, where we had a lead at halftime and we lost, or where we got blown out 4-0 by Toronto, all of these moments, you were very close in year 1. And if you're not able to now take that mark into year 2, then that would be a huge disappointment. I'm looking at Atlanta United and how much movement is going on in the squad. Is this a rebuilding era, or is this a moment of cleansing to take this side to the next level? Who knows? But we know that Atlanta United fans have every right to believe that they deserve to be a playoff team as well. You don't go from winning an MLS Cup until failing to reach the playoffs consistently. That becomes a problem with even an incredible fan base like Atlanta United has. So I think that it's hard to predict right now. Obviously, Nashville is a quality side, and you expect them with the quality on the pitch to be a real contender as well. I think it's going to be a really interesting season, honestly, when you look at the growth of the league and the investment that teams are making, where you look at the jumps that teams were able to make. I mean, who had FC Cincinnati doing as well as they did? Not very many people. You don't go from wooden spooner to really challenging everybody very often. So it will be interesting to see what we're saying after the first 5 matches of the season. But I have high hopes at the East being extremely entertaining and everybody beating everybody, which is what helps a league grow, right? Like competitive games, unpredictable matches, and drama like that is what people really want to see from a league.
I mean, you look at Philadelphia. Everybody's anticipating that they're going to be right near. Exactly. Montreal finishes second. Wilfred Nancy goes from Montreal to Columbus. Georgi Mihailovic goes to AZ Alkmaar. Hernan Losada comes in, which was
controversial. Interesting.
Yes, interesting. Yes, let's go there. NYC for me, with all of the folks who are gone, is the one where you sit there initially and you're kind of scratching your head, like maybe sit there, you put a circle around them because of all of the folks that are gone. Callens is gone. Eber is now in Seattle. Santi Rodriguez gone, a handful of players. Sean Johnson still in play in Major League Soccer as a free agent. He's doing the rounds right now, getting great front row seats, hanging out with Drake at Toronto Raptors games as Toronto FC tries to court him. And obviously, NYC is looking at the youth that they have on hand as one of those tenants that's going to carry them in, and that's just your top three. And Red Bulls, of course, are going to Red Bull. So I'm looking at New York City and in New Jersey as two of the folks where I'm going to sit there and I'll put my hand up and go, maybe.
Yeah, and with youth, it's unpredictable, right? We see youngsters that come in and thrive. We see the academy model doing very well, but we also see the difficulties of adjusting to the league. It is a big jump, and it is a very tolling league on young players. And that's why MLS Next Pro is going to be so exciting this year. I know people like us, John, that are so passionate about youth development have been looking forward to this for a very long time, because it is going to fill that gap. It is going to help those big draft signings that you've got that maybe aren't quite ready for consistent MLS minutes to get an opportunity at a higher level instead of sitting on the bench and things like that. And I'm excited. Again, you want to be excited for now to improve the league for years to come, having that pathway to success going forwards.
All right. So we mentioned Atlanta. You mentioned Atlanta and what has been going on with Atlanta United. Not officially official from either side, but it looks like Joseph Martinez is working out, home shopping, what have you, for Inter Miami. Since you live here in the heart of the footprint and work in the Eastern Conference, you work in Charlotte, and you've seen the Joseph Martinez situation, what's your look from your perspective, somewhat outside the franchise, about what's been going on with Joseph Martinez, who is apparently probably not officially, but fairly officially with Inter Miami?
It's a really tough one, isn't it? Because you can't underestimate the positive impact that Joseph Martinez had for Atlanta United, particularly during the most successful years of the club, right? He was a prolific striker, a historical striker in MLS, and a name that will go down in history. But as a player that's had a significant injury, I understand how hard it is to come back from injuries. I understand how, and he's not old, but you're not a spring chicken anymore, how coming back can change how you have to play, right? And it can change the style of player that you are, and it can change your effectiveness, and it can change your role within a team. And I think some players are able to maybe understand and handle that and maybe redevelop themselves, and other players maybe struggle with doing that. I know that when I had a huge season-ending knee injury, it was very difficult for me to adjust to maybe not being as explosive, for not being as aggressive, for not being as maybe smooth as I wanted to be. And it took a long time to adjust and change the way I played to find as much success in my role. And those are things that you have to do. And I wonder if it's been really hard for Joseph Martinez, for Atlanta United fans, to see that he isn't quite the same Joseph that maybe they fell in love with. And that's understandable. Do I think that it's a very emotionally invested move, because this is maybe the first player in Atlanta United history to have such an impact, and then to go to Inter Miami and to maybe not have the send-off that people would want? I get why there's those frustrations, but at the end of the day, football's a business, right? And if a player is on one of the biggest budgets as a player, and maybe they're not having the impact that that budget deserves, then sometimes you have to move them. So I get the frustration coming from fan bases, but I also think maybe it is a smart move by Atlanta United if he's not going to be able to have the impact that you want with the position he's in. But there's some big boots to fill in terms of a franchise face, and there's some big boots to fill on the pitch when you're not 100% sure where your goals are going to come from, with all the changeover in players that Atlanta United have had in the offseason.
How difficult was it for you to change who you were as a player, emotionally, athletically, after the injury? Because, 99.9 carry the nine about 9 different places. we don't know what you went through. We don't know what athletes are going through.
Hmm.
How difficult is that to understand? Okay, there are things that I can't do anymore. I'm going to have to approach my game differently to still be active / successful. How difficult was that for you?
Really difficult. And I think what heightens that difficulty is that you're away from home, right? And I think we forget that sometimes with these athletes too. Yeah, he's been here a long time and he has friends and he has family around him, or friends like family, but you're still not around your direct family, you're still far away. And so the mental toll is just as hard as the physical toll. And I think that mental health in soccer is something we don't necessarily talk about as much as maybe we should. It's definitely a topic that's growing, but it can be really difficult mentally as a player to adjust and see your career changing and having doubts about where you are and sort of wondering your purpose and wondering where you're able to find yourself. For me, I look back and there are days where I'm still upset that maybe I didn't feel like I reached the peak of my career because of an injury, but I'm grateful that I was able to transition into a role that keeps me involved in the sport in an amazing way. Not everybody is as fortunate as that. I think what's hard is um, realizing you can't maybe do what you wanted to do, make a save that you would have made before your injury, and learning that you're now going to have to adjust your positioning or adjust your training program, something that you've done for years and years. You got to remember, you've been playing this game since you were 5, since you were 6, like properly, and training and getting your brain to have these automatic movements, and all of a sudden you have to change the way you do that. It's you can't underestimate how difficult it is.
All right. So since you mentioned keepers, let's talk about the Prem. Let's talk about the Premier League. Couple of situations of this past weekend that that drew folks' eyes for bad more than for good. Let's start with the goalkeeper incident with Aaron Ramsdale, North London Derby, and where fans and we'll get into Richarlison too, but fans literally, Aaron Ramsdale is like, hey, I forgot something. I've got to go get it at the end of a match. Fan lashes out and
Hmm.
kicks
Yeah.
Aaron Ramsdale. What in the wide world of sports?
Being a goalkeeper is the hardest position, right? Because of where you are a lot of the time. I remember some games where I had some really nasty people behind my goal. I used to always have the student section behind me. So I remember some really horrible things that were said to me, people looking up my parents' names, people looking up where I played, yelling different things at me. It was some wild times, but to not feel safe playing is a really horrible thing. And to feel like the stewards, I don't think did a good enough job. We already know this is a derby, right? We already know this is going to be loaded. You're at the end of the game. How you don't have security to protect your player, it is vile to me. It's wild. And I think that people aren't talking or weren't talking enough about how inexcusable it was that Aaron Ramsdale felt that he wasn't safe on the pitch, and that fan will probably get a lifetime ban, I'm sure. And it was pretty obvious who it was. He didn't make an effort to hide his face, so that should be pretty easy identification. But it stems from what you're seeing on the pitch. You mentioned Richarlison. When an opposition player is grabbing the goalkeeper by the head, throwing him around, pushing him away, fans see that, and fans are impressionable people. And if they think a player, someone that they look up to, is doing that, then what do you expect? You expect it to be copied, to be repeated. And I just think it's inexcusable. I don't care how annoying Ramsdale maybe was. Maybe he was talking a bit of trash. Maybe he was, time wasting. It's part of the, position. We are your worst enemy and your favorite player a lot of the time. But I think that there's no excuses. And we've seen goalkeepers in history get taunted, get hurt. I think back to Chris Kirkland getting punched in the head. And you see the issues that Chris Kirkland has now had with his mental health, with his, I believe, abuse of substances, even that he came out openly about. And I think that we talk a lot about goalkeepers being crazy, right? And I think we mean it kind of jokingly because let's be honest, you're standing in front of a ball getting pelted. But I also think goalkeepers have to be a bit crazy to deal with the mental torment. And I think mental health of goalkeepers is one of the most understated parts because the mental strength of dealing with mistakes, of dealing with fans, of dealing with the pressure is huge. And that's something that I think again needs to be invested in fully is like mental health and understanding of goalkeepers as well.
No question about it. And I know that you've got a jet because you've got a life. I don't. You have a life. I know we're going to have you back on a regular basis as much as you
Yep.
want, because you've got golden ticket status and you can crash whenever.
Well,
What's going
absolutely,
on?
I'm grateful.
What's going on? Folks need to know about with you as you're having is that your first cup or is that your second cup?
It is a first cup, but it was a extra large cup. So we'll see if I get another one. Yeah, just doing the rounds, talking about football every day that I can, talking about the championship, talking about MLS. Hopefully we'll have some official announcements coming soon about my return to Charlotte FC. So at Jess Talks Footie is where you're going to be able to find me on Instagram and Twitter. And I look forward to connecting. So glad that I was able to hop on and speak to you guys, because it's always a pleasure.
It's always fun, and especially, we'll talk championship smack later on in the year when we know what things are going to be like. Jess, be good, be safe. We'll catch up with you soon, my friend.
Thanks so much. Bye.